If you survive my touch, you're worthy. Alien warrior challenged her human lover. The great council hall floated above the blue-white clouds of the capital world. It was made of clear crystal and living metal, shaped by hands that believed beauty proved superiority. Light passed through the walls like water, casting long reflections across the floor where dozens of alien species sat in rising circles. At the very center stood one human. Elia's ward kept his hands folded behind his back, just as he had been taught during diplomatic training. His dark suit looked small in the vast chamber, almost fragile. Around him, the air hummed with quiet power, technology far older than humanity, minds far colder. To most of the council, Elias was not important. Humans were new, weak, loud, too emotional. Useful only as analysts, translators, and minor trade partners. Humanity had been invited here not as equals, but as a test subject, another species to be measured, classified, and placed into a comfortable corner. Elias knew this. He also knew something they did not. High above him, the ruling delegates spoke in smooth, confident tones. They praised stability, order, balance. They spoke of how the council protected the galaxy from chaos, how borders were carefully managed, how shortages and conflicts were unfortunate but necessary parts of maintaining peace. Elias listened without interrupting. He always did. To his left, standing at a respectful distance, was Kareth. She was impossible to ignore. She stood taller than most beings in the chamber, her armored form dark and elegant, her posture perfectly straight. Her species were warriors by tradition, guardians of law and enforcement of council decisions. Her role was security liaison, assigned to watch the human delegation, not to protect them, but to ensure they caused no disruption. Her face was unreadable, carved by rigid discipline. Her people believed emotion was weakness, yet her eyes often lingered on Elias longer than protocol required. She had noticed things, how he listened more than he spoke, how he asked questions no one else bothered to ask. How he never flinched around her, never treated her like a weapon or a threat. He spoke to her the same way he spoke to everyone else, calm, curious, respectful. That alone was unusual. The council leader finished speaking and gestured toward Elias. The human analyst may now offer his species statement, the leader said. Elias stepped forward. He felt hundreds of eyes settle on him. He felt the silent expectation, gratitude, submission, agreement. He took a slow breath. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," Elias said. His voice was steady, clear, and not raised. "I was asked to confirm humanity's understanding of the Council's role in maintaining galactic stability." He paused. "Our understanding has changed." A low murmur moved through the chamber. Kareth's head tilted slightly. That was not in the prepared script. Elias continued. "Over the past 4 years, humanity has worked closely with Council data networks, trade routes, resource flows, conflict records, population shifts." He activated a small device at his wrist. Light formed above him, showing simple lines and patterns. "At first, we believed the Council responded to crises," he said, "but humans are very good at noticing patterns." The murmurs grew louder. "These shortages," Elias said, pointing to a glowing arc, "always begin just before Council intervention. These border conflicts," another arc, "always justify expanded authority. These emergency powers," another, "never fully expire." The chamber grew quiet. "This is not balance," Elias said softly. "This is design." The council leader's expression hardened. "You are implying intent without authority." "I am presenting evidence," Elias replied. "Intent becomes clear when outcomes repeat." Screens across the chamber lit up as Elias released the data. It was clean, organized, cross-referenced, no accusations, just facts. Several delegates leaned forward. Kareth felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. The council leader rose. "This is a serious accusation. You claim the council itself creates instability to justify control." "I claim that someone does," Elias said, "and that humanity can no longer ignore it." A ripple of anger spread through the upper tiers. Accusations of manipulation, of human misunderstanding, of emotional reasoning. Elias stood still and listened. "We expected this reaction," he said when allowed to speak again. "Humans have lived under systems like this before. We recognize the signs." The word "before" echoed strangely in the chamber. Kareth's gaze sharpened. "You accuse your superiors," a delegate said, "without fear of consequence." Elias met their eyes. "Truth is more important than comfort." That was when the order was given, not loudly, not dramatically. A simple signal passed between enforcers. Kareth felt it instantly. Two council guardians moved forward, their steps measured, calm. They did not draw weapons. They did not need to. Authority itself was enough. Elias did not step back. He knew this moment would come. The guardians reached for him, and Kareth moved. It was not fast. It was not violent. It was absolute. She stepped between Elias and the guardians, her armored form blocking them completely. Her hand rose, not in threat, but in command. "Stop," she said. The word carried weight. Her species' voice was trained to carry authority across battlefields and courts alike. The guardians froze. The chamber erupted into shocked murmurs. "Security liaison Kareth," the council leader said sharply. "Step aside." She did not. Her heart pounded. This was not planned. This was not allowed, but it was right. "He is under my protection," she said. "That is not your authority." Kareth turned her head slightly, just enough to look back at Elias. He looked at her with surprise, but not fear. She faced the council again. "He is my mate," she said clearly. The words fell into the chamber like stone into water. Silence, not confusion, not noise, pure, stunned silence. Elias felt his breath catch. He had not expected this. Humans did not fully understand mate bond law, but they understood enough. It was sacred, unbreakable, ancient. The council leader stared at Kareth. "You invoke a bond with a human?" "Yes. Such a claim requires proof." "Our law does not," Kareth replied. "The declaration itself is proof." The guardians stepped back, not by choice but by obligation. Kareth felt the weight of what she had done settle over her. Her rank, her future, her entire place in her society had shifted in one sentence. She did not regret it. Elias found his voice. "I did not ask for this," he said quietly. "I know," Kareth replied without looking at him. The council leader's voice was cold. "Then explain why you would risk everything for him." Ed's jaw tightened. She spoke the truth because lies would be worse. "Because he spoke truth knowing it would cost him," she said. "Because he treated me as a thinking being, not a tool. Because his species chooses conscience over safety." A tremor moved through the chamber. Elias looked at her, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as a person who had made an impossible choice. The council leader said nothing for a long moment. "Then proceed," they said. "The human may finish." Elias nodded slowly. He turned back to the council, standing not alone anymore. "Humans are not strong," he said. "We know this. We break easily. We argue. We fail often." He glanced at Kareth. "But we adapt. We question. And when systems hurt others to preserve themselves, we speak even when it scares us." The chamber listened. For the first time, not because of authority, but because of courage. And far above the clouds, beneath a crystal sky, the galaxy shifted, quietly, irrevocably. The silence after Elias finished speaking did not break quickly. It stretched across the council hall, heavy and uncomfortable. The crystal walls reflected the still figures inside, as if the chamber itself was waiting. Kareth remained in front of Elias. Her stance was calm, but inside her thoughts moved fast. By declaring a mate bond, she had stepped outside everything she had been trained to obey. There was no taking it back. Her people believed that a bond declared before witnesses was permanent, no matter the species. The council leader finally spoke. "This hearing is no longer routine," the leader said. "Human Elias Ward, your accusations challenge the foundation of this council. Warrior Kareth, your declaration challenges our laws in a way we have not faced before." Elias nodded once. "Then maybe it is time to face it." Some delegates reacted with anger. Others with quiet interest. Several activated private data channels, already checking the evidence Elias had released. Humans were careful. They knew that truth needed to survive inspection. A delegate from a trade species spoke. "If this data is false, it will collapse under review." Elias replied calmly. "It will not." Kareth noticed something then. The council was no longer united. They had ruled for too long by assuming no one would question them in the right way. The leader raised a hand. "Verification will take time. Until then, the human will remain here." "He will not be detained," Kareth said at once. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You would deny council authority." "I would uphold the law you claim to defend," she answered. "A declared mate is under my protection. To violate that law would reveal more than his words ever could." That struck deep. The council leader paused, then spoke with measured care. "Then you will both remain as honored guests, under observation." Elias exhaled slowly. It was not victory, but it was space to breathe. The session ended without ceremony. Delegates departed in clusters, speaking in low voices. Some avoided looking at Elias. Others looked at him with something close to respect. When the hall emptied, Kareth finally turned to him. "You are quiet," she said. "I am trying to understand what just happened," Elias replied honestly. She inclined her head. "That is fair." They were escorted to a high chamber overlooking the planet below. No guards stood inside. The door sealed softly behind them. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You did not have to do that," Elias said at last. "I know," Kareth answered. "That is why it mattered." He looked at her. "Your future, your people, will judge me," she said. "But my people believe honor is action, not obedience. If they do not, then they have already lost what they claim to protect." Elias smiled faintly. "Humans say something similar. We just argue about it more." That earned a small pause from her. Then, unexpectedly, a quiet sound that might have been amusement. Over the next cycles, the council worked. Verification teams examined the data. Independent systems confirmed patterns. Records matched too closely to deny. Trade disruptions had been timed. Conflicts encouraged. Fear used like a tool. Elias was called to speak again and again. He answered every question patiently, never attacking, never raising his voice. He did not accuse individuals. He explained systems. That made it harder to dismiss him. Other species began to speak. Some admitted they had suspected manipulation but lacked proof. Others were shocked, struggling to accept that the structure they trusted had betrayed them. Kareth stood beside Elias every time, silent, steady, a living reminder that tradition could stand with truth. One council member tried to undermine the bond. "You claim emotional connection," they said, "yet you barely know each other." Kareth answered simply, "A bond is not time, it is recognition." Elias added, "Humans do not rush this kind of thing, but we know when someone stands with us when it matters." That answer spread quickly. Not all council leaders resisted. Some stepped down quietly. Others argued for reform. A few tried to delay, hoping the moment would pass. It did not. Too many species had seen enough. When the final session was called, the chamber was full again. But the tone was different. Less pride, more uncertainty. The council leader spoke, voice strained. "The evidence confirms unacceptable manipulation. Authority must be restructured." The words echoed like thunder. Elias felt the weight of them. He had expected resistance. He had not expected change. "We propose shared oversight," Elias said when invited to speak. "No single council, transparent records, rotating authority." "Humans seek power," one delegate accused weakly. Elias shook his head. "Humans seek accountability. Power follows those who fix things, not those who demand control." There was no answer to that. The vote passed. The old council dissolved, not with force, but with agreement. Recognition was withdrawn, authority redistributed. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy reorganized itself peacefully. Afterward, as delegates departed, many stopped before Elias and Kareth. Some offered thanks, some offered apology, some simply bowed. Outside the chamber, beneath an open sky, Elias finally stopped walking. "I changed things," he said quietly. "I hope it was for the better." Kareth looked at the horizon. "Change is always frightening. That does not make it wrong." He hesitated. "About the bond, I know it began as protection." She turned to face him fully. "It became choice." Elias met her eyes. "Then we should choose it honestly." She nodded once. "That is our way as well." Above them, ships moved in new patterns. Trade lanes adjusted. Signals carried news across stars. Humanity was no longer a quiet observer. It had become a mirror, not feared, not worshipped, but respected. And beside a human who dared to speak, a warrior who dared to stand, the galaxy learned something simple and powerful. Strength was not domination. It was courage shared. The galaxy did not change all at once. Change never did. It moved slowly, like light traveling across long distances, touching some worlds sooner than others. After the council dissolved, Elias and Kareth did not return home immediately. Too many systems were unstable. Too many questions needed answers. A temporary assembly was formed, made of representatives from many species, including humans. Its purpose was simple but difficult, to keep things working while something better was built. Elias was asked to stay. He did not want power. He said this many times. But others listened to him because he explained problems clearly and never tried to control the outcome. That made people trust him. Kareth remained at his side, not as a guard, but as a symbol. Her presence reminded everyone that old laws could support new truths. Some from her own species watched her closely, unsure whether to condemn or honor her choice. At first, the reactions were mixed. Some worlds welcomed transparency. They opened records and shared resources. Others resisted quietly, afraid of losing advantages they had enjoyed under the old system. There were delays, arguments, and moments when progress seemed to stop. Elias felt the weight of it during long meetings. He would sit quietly, listening to delegates argue in circles, repeating fears dressed as logic. One evening, after a particularly exhausting session, Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Lights stretched endlessly below like stars trapped on the surface of a world. "You look tired," Kareth said, joining him. "I am," he admitted. "I keep wondering if speaking up was enough, or if it was only the beginning of something too big." She considered this. "Beginnings are always heavy, endings are simple, that is why many fear change," he smiled faintly. "Humans fear it too, we just pretend we don't." They stood in silence for a while. "I never thanked you properly," Elias said. "For what?" she asked. "For choosing me." "For choosing truth when it cost you certainty." Kareth turned her head slightly. "You misunderstand. I did not lose certainty, I found it." News soon arrived from her homeworld. Her actions had divided opinion, but the response was not punishment. Elders spoke of old teachings, of times when bonds were formed across unexpected lines. Some called her reckless, others called her brave. In the end, she was summoned. Elias offered to go with her, but she shook her head. "This is something I must face alone." When she left, the space beside him felt larger than before. During her absence, Elias worked harder than ever. He helped design open data systems that any species could check. He encouraged smaller worlds to speak, even when their voices shook. He reminded everyone that perfection was not the goal, honesty was. Some resisted him openly. "You are human," one delegate said sharply. "You do not understand our history." Elias replied calmly, "Then teach me, but do not use history as a reason to keep hurting the present." That answer spread just as his earlier words had. Weeks passed. Then Kareth returned. She did not speak at first. She simply stood before him, her posture steady but her eyes searching his face. "Well," he asked gently. "My people did not strip me of rank," she said. "They asked me to serve differently." He let out a breath he had been holding. "They said our strength has always been in knowing when to stand firm," she continued, "and when to change direction. They told me to observe humanity more closely, to learn." Elias smiled. "That sounds like trust." "It is," she said, "and expectation." As systems stabilized, the temporary assembly began to fade into something new. Not a single council, but a network. Decisions were slower, but they were shared. Mistakes were visible, but they were corrected together. Humanity was offered a permanent leadership role. Elias declined on their behalf. "We will participate," he said. "We will advise, but we will not rule." If this system fails, it should not fail because one species held too much weight. That choice surprised many, but it also settled fears. Over time, trust replaced suspicion. On a quiet day far from council chambers, Elias and Kareth walked through a public garden. Different species shared the space, talking, resting, existing together without ceremony. "This place did not exist before," Elias said. "No," Kareth agreed. "There was no reason for it." He looked around. "Now there is." They stopped near a pool of still water. Their reflections appeared together, different shapes, same posture. "I do not know what our future looks like," Elias said. "Neither do I," Kareth replied, "but it will be chosen, not assigned." He nodded. "That's enough for me." Above them, ships passed silently, following paths no longer hidden. Signals flowed openly. The galaxy was not perfect. It never would be, but it was awake. And it remembered the moment a single human spoke, a single warrior stood, and many others decided to listen. Not because they were forced, but because they chose to. The years that followed were quieter, but not easier. Peace did not mean stillness, it meant work. Elias often thought about that as he sat in small rooms instead of great halls, listening to local leaders argue about water access, trade fairness, or old grudges that refused to fade. These meetings were not grand. No crystal walls, no powerful titles. Just beings trying to live without someone above them deciding their fate. This was the future they had chosen. Kareth watched him from across the table during one such meeting. He looked older now, not weak, just shaped by responsibility. Humans aged quickly compared to most species, and she had learned to notice the subtle signs. Slower movements, longer pauses, deeper thoughts behind the eyes. After the meeting ended, she walked with him through a narrow corridor filled with natural light. You carry too much, she said. He smiled tiredly. Humans do that. We think if we carry it ourselves, no one else will have to. That belief will break you, she said. Maybe, he replied, but it also built us. News began to arrive from the outer systems, not rebellion. Not war, confusion. Some worlds had lived under the old council for so long that freedom felt like abandonment. Without a central authority to blame or obey, leaders struggled. Decisions stalled. People argued. Progress slowed. Critics began to speak. This system is inefficient. This openness creates weakness. Human ideals do not fit the galaxy. Elias listened to all of it. He asked Kareth to accompany him on a long journey far from the capital worlds to see the effects firsthand. She agreed without hesitation. They traveled to small stations, young colonies, old worlds that had been ignored for centuries. Elias spoke less and observed more. He watched how communities adapted, how mistakes were made openly, how solutions came from unexpected voices. On one world, a group of different species had formed a local council that met in a shared marketplace. Anyone could speak, arguments were loud, progress was slow, but no one was silent. This would not have been allowed before, Kareth said as they watched. No, Elias replied. But it would have looked peaceful, she considered that. Your people accept disorder. We accept growth, he said. They look similar at first. Not everyone welcomed them. On one station, a former council official confronted Elias. You broke a system that worked, the official said. Now look at the chaos. Elias answered calmly. It worked for you, not for everyone. Stability matters more than fairness, the official argued. Elias shook his head. Stability without fairness is just quiet suffering. The official had no reply. As they returned from their journey, Elias grew ill. At first, he ignored it. Humans often did. But Kareth noticed the changes quickly. His steps slowed. His voice weakened. His breathing shortened. She insisted he rest. I can't stop, he said one evening, lying back against a soft surface. Things are still fragile. She sat beside him. So are you. For the first time since she had known him, Elias looked afraid. Humans don't last long, he said quietly. Not compared to you or the galaxy. Kareth felt something tighten inside her chest again. That unfamiliar feeling she had learned was grief arriving early. Time is not measured by length, she said. It is measured by change, he smiled faintly. You're learning human sayings. I am learning truths, she replied. Word spread quickly when Elias withdrew from public duties. Messages came from across the network. Gratitude, concern, questions. Some asked if humanity would retreat. Elias recorded a final address, not from a grand chamber, but from a simple room with open light. I did not build this future, he said in the recording. All of you did. Humans did not give the galaxy anything new. We only reminded it of something old. That power should answer to those it affects. He paused. Do not look for replacements, look for responsibility. The message traveled farther than he ever had. Elias did not die immediately. Humans were stubborn. He recovered slowly enough to walk gardens again, enough to talk, to laugh, to sit beside Kareth under open skies. One day, as they watched ships cross the horizon, he spoke. When I'm gone, he said, this will keep going, promise me that. She turned to him. You still think this is yours to lose, he chuckled softly. Old habit. The galaxy has learned, she said. It will not forget easily. He closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. That's all I hoped for. Years later, when Elias finally passed, there was no single ceremony. There were many. On small worlds, people gathered in open spaces. On stations, lights dimmed for a moment. On planets he had never visited, children learned his name as part of history, not as a ruler, but as a voice. Kareth stood alone in a quiet place when she felt him go. Her people offered her honor beyond measure. Songs, statues, positions of command. She refused most of them. Instead, she chose to serve as a traveler, a witness. She visited worlds that struggled and worlds that thrived. She listened more than she spoke, just as Elias had. When others asked why she walked this path, she answered simply, because someone once stood beside me and reminded the galaxy that strength is choosing to care. The systems Elias helped build did not remain perfect. They bent, they failed, they were repaired. But they never returned to silence. And across the stars, in countless forms and languages, one idea endured. No voice was too small. No truth was too dangerous. And even a single life lived with courage could change everything.